I thanked my grandmother for the $200 check. I even smiled when I said it because that's what you do when an 81-year-old woman, your Halmione, your son, hands you an envelope at Thanksgiving like it's a medal she pinned to your chest with shaking hands. I had no idea that, in her mind, I was thanking her for $500,000. The dining room was warm in that way old houses get on holidays. Too many bodies, too much food, too much history pressed into the wallpaper. My aunt's cinnamon candles were fighting a losing battle against turkey and gravy, and the sharp sweetness of cranberries. The table was crowded with dishes and people, and the kind of tension you can't name without starting a fight. My father, Daniel Park, stood at the head of the table with the carving knife like he'd been born holding it. He always carved the turkey. It was his ritual, his performance, his proof that he was the one keeping the family fed. My brother Ethan sat on the opposite side, too close to his fiancée Vivian, like proximity could stitch them into one unbreakable unit. Vivian wore a cream sweater that probably cost more than my car payment and smiled at my grandmother like a saint posing for a portrait. I took the envelope from Halmione with both hands, respect, habit, muscle memory. "Thank you, Halmione," I said, and I meant it. "This is really generous." Her eyes were soft at first, proud, loving. Then my father cleared his throat, one of his quiet warning sounds, and Halmione's expression shifted like a curtain caught by a sudden gust. 200, she repeated. I blinked. Yes, the check. Thank you. Halmione looked past me. Not at Ethan. Not at Vivian. Straight at my father. And my father, for the first time in my life, forgot to keep his face arranged. Daniel, Halmione said, voice calm, words sharp. Where is the rest? The carving knife stopped halfway through the turkey breast. All I could hear was the soft, wet scrape of metal against cooked skin, then nothing. No forks clinking. No polite laughter from the living room. Even the kids who'd been whining about dinner for an hour went quiet like they sensed something predatory had entered the room. My father smiled too late, too hard. Mom, he said, because he always called her mom in English when he wanted the room to see him as the patient's son. What are you talking about? Halmione didn't blink. The money. The $500,000. I sent it for Sophia. My stomach did something strange, like it tried to fold in on itself to protect whatever was inside. $500,000. I glanced down at the envelope in my hands like it might change if I stared hard enough. My father laughed. A quick, clean sound. Mom, you're mixing things up, he said. Let's not do this at the table. Ethan's chair creaked. He'd shifted, uncomfortable, eyes flicking between me and my father like a trapped animal. Vivian's smile held, but the skin around it tightened. I didn't speak yet. That's the thing people never understand about me. I'm not dramatic. I don't like scenes. I work in digital forensics. I spend my life watching people lie with confidence, and then watching their confidence die when the evidence shows up. But in that moment I wasn't my job. I was a daughter holding a $200 check while my grandmother stared down my father like she was counting the years she trusted him. Halmione touched the table with her fingertips. Steadying herself or grounding herself, I wasn't sure. I went to the bank, she said. I did what you told me. I wired it to the account. Sophia's account. For her future. For safety. For home. She paused. I did not wire $200. My father's smile wavered. My Aunt Mira, Dad's sister, shifted her gaze to him, suspicion waking like a dog lifting its head. Ethan swallowed hard. I looked at my father and finally managed. What is she talking about? Dad's eyes flicked to me. There it was, command. Silent instruction. Don't push. Don't embarrass him. Don't embarrass the family. The same look he'd used when I was 16 and wanted to call the police on the neighbor who'd grabbed my wrist. The same look when I told him my boyfriend in college had hit me, and he'd asked what I'd done to provoke it. Family first, Sophia. Quiet first. Obedience first. But I wasn't 16 anymore. And my grandmother had just said the words $500,000 like she was stating the weather. Mom's confused, Dad said softer now for the room. She's on new meds. You know that. Halmione's eyes narrowed. I am not confused, she said. Do not say that about me. Vivian's hand slid onto Ethan's knee under the table. A calming gesture or a controlling one? Hard to tell. Ethan's face was pale. My hands were steady though because I'd been trained by worse moments than this. I'd been trained by disaster. I set the envelope down gently like it was fragile. Hermione, I said, keeping my voice low. When did you wire it? Early October, she answered immediately. I remember because the leaves were bright, and the banker wore the purple tie. I signed the paper. Daniel said it would go to Sophia. Dad cut in. We're not doing this. His knife clacked against the platter. A warning shot. I lifted my gaze. Doing what? Asking where $500,000 went. That was the moment the room truly changed. Because everyone understood numbers. $500,000 wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a senile slip. It was a weaponized amount. Ethan's lips parted like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. My Aunt Mira leaned forward. Daniel, she said, voice sharp. Did Mom send money? Dad's eyes flashed and for a second the mask slipped. Anger. Fear. Then he smoothed it back on like a politician. Mira, he said, please. Let me handle my mother. Hermione's hand moved slow, deliberate, to the center of the table. She placed her palm flat on the wood. I handled myself, she said. I handled my money. I sent it for Sophia. She looked at me then, not with softness but with something like apology. Sophia, she said quietly, did you not get it? The room spun just slightly. I tried to answer. My throat tightened. I didn't know there was anything to get. Dad's chair scraped back. Okay, he said, too brisk. That's enough. Mom needs to rest. Sophia, you and I can talk later. Everybody eat. But the room didn't obey him. Because obedience is a contract and contracts break when someone finally says the truth out loud. I stared at my father. And in that stare, something inside me clicked into place like a lock turning. If $500,000 existed, it left a trail. And if it left a trail, I could find it. 3 days earlier, Ethan had called me with the same voice he used when he was about to ask for something that would cost me. Soph, he'd said, too casual. Hey, so small change. You don't have to come for Thanksgiving. I'd been in my apartment in Seattle, still wearing my work hoodie, still smelling faintly like stale coffee in server rooms. My laptop had been opened to a case I couldn't shake. Someone inside a company siphoning vendor payments in $10,000 increments like it was a game. Excuse me, I'd said. He rushed on. It's just, Grandma's been tired. Dad thinks we should keep it quiet. Less stress. I'd leaned back in my chair, eyes narrowing. My family didn't do quiet. They did appearances. They were fine. They did big dinners and big smiles and silent grudges. Since when does Dad care about stress? I'd asked. Ethan laughed, but it was hollow. Come on. Don't be like that. I let the silence stretch. I've learned silence makes people fill it with their real reason. Ethan exhaled. Vivian and I, we're announcing something. Engagement. I guess. He hesitated. Yeah. Then why would you not want me there? Another pause. Longer. Dad just thinks it'll be smoother. Smoother for who? Ethan's voice dropped. Sophia, please. Just this year, can you not? I'd stared at the wall, heart thumping. Not because I love Thanksgiving. I didn't. But because the request didn't fit. My brother wasn't the type to push family away unless someone else was pushing him. Ethan, I said quietly, did something happen? No, he said it too fast. My fingers tapped the desk. You're lying. I'm not. You're lying. I repeated, not angry, just certain. You're terrible at it. His breath hitched. I heard voices in the background, Vivian soft and tight, like she was coaching him. Ethan lowered his voice further. Just trust me. I almost laughed. Trust you, I said, when you won't tell me what's going on. Sophia. Ethan, I cut in. I'm coming. He went quiet. Then, almost inaudible. Don't. That single word was what turned my suspicion into certainty. Not worry. Not request. Not please. Don't. Like he was afraid of what would happen if I showed up. Why? I asked. Ethan didn't answer. He just said, please don't make this harder. And then he hung up. I booked my flight 5 minutes later. Because if my family was trying to keep me out, it meant something was happening inside. And I've built a career on one truth. When people are desperate to control the room, it's because the room contains evidence. After the carving knife stopped, after my father tried to restart dinner like nothing had happened, I excused myself. I didn't run. I didn't slam doors. I just stood, pushed my chair in, and walked down the hallway like my body belonged to me. My father started to follow. "Sophia," he warned. I didn't stop. In the guest room, the one that still smelled faintly like mothballs and old detergent, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I had a joint account with my grandmother that had been set up years ago when she'd insisted on something safe for me. I'd never used it. I'd left it dormant because my life had been too busy surviving on my own, building independence brick by brick. I logged in. The balance loaded. My breath caught. Not because it was huge, because it was wrong. There was a transfer in $500,000. And then minutes later a transfer out $500,000. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I tapped the outgoing transfer details. Recipient. An unfamiliar LLC. Routing number. Not my bank. Timestamp. 3 minutes after the incoming wire posted. 3 minutes. That wasn't spending. That was extraction. That was someone waiting with a bucket under a leak. My hand stayed steady. My mind didn't. I took screenshots. I exported the statement PDF. I saved it to my encrypted drive. Habit. Reflex. Then I called the bank. A recorded voice told me my wait time would be approximately 12 minutes. I stared at the wall and tried to breathe. In the dining room, I could hear my father talking, voice smooth, persuasive. I could hear my Aunt Mira snapping back. The family fracturing. The bank finally connected. "Thank you for calling. I need to confirm a power of attorney document used on my account," I said, voice clipped. Immediately. There was a pause. The rep switched from cheerful to careful. "Ma'am, can I have your name?" "Sophia Park." She verified me. Asked security questions. I answered too fast. Then she pulled the notes. I heard her inhale. "Oh," she said softly. "What?" I demanded. "There was a POA uploaded," she said. "It was used to authorize the outgoing wire." My stomach went cold. Uploaded by who? I can't see a name, but I can see the document was submitted in person at a branch. "In person," I repeated. "Yes." I closed my eyes. That meant someone in my family had walked into a bank with paperwork and a smile and stolen $500,000 like it was routine. "Whose signature is on the POA?" I asked. Another pause. "Daniel Park," she said. "My father. Not my mother. Not a stranger. My father. The man who carved the turkey like he owned the family. The man who had just tried to tell everyone my grandmother was confused. The man who had taught me to keep it private and protect the family and handle things quietly. The man who had been holding the knife." I opened my eyes. The room seemed sharper. The air thinner. "Send me a copy of the document," I said. "I can email it to the address on file." "Do it." I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone like it had turned into a weapon. A knock hit the door. "Sophia," my father said, voice low. "Open the door." I didn't move. "Sophia," he repeated, harder now. "This is family business." Family business. That phrase. The phrase people use when they want you to accept harm quietly. I stood and walked to the door. I didn't open it. I rested my forehead against the wood and said softly, "You forged a power of attorney to steal my grandmother's money." Silence. Then, too calm. "You don't understand." I almost laughed. "Oh," I whispered. "I understand perfectly." Back at the table, dinner had restarted in a broken way. Forks moving, mouths chewing, eyes darting. No one was enjoying the turkey anymore. Ethan wouldn't look at me. Vivian watched me too closely, like she was tracking whether I'd bite. My father sat stiff-backed, trying to regain control by acting like nothing had changed. Hermione didn't eat. She held her napkin in her lap like it was an anchor. I ate 2 bites, more for appearance than appetite, and then I did what I always do when chaos hits. I went looking for the pattern. While my cousins argued about football in the living room like the world was normal, I slipped into the hallway and opened social media. Vivian's account was public. Of course it was. Vivian lived like an advertisement. Soft lighting, perfect angles, Curated happiness. I scrolled. There it was, 2 weeks after the Wire date. Aspen. A photo of her in a white robe on a balcony, mountains behind her. Caption. Resetting with my favorite person. Next slide. A table set with champagne and fruit. Tag. A luxury resort. I checked the timestamp. Then I checked the bank outflow. My jaw tightened. I kept scrolling. A close-up of a watch on Ethan's wrist. Not the engagement ring story, different flex. Caption. He deserves the best. A designer bag held up like a trophy. Caption. Treat yourself season. Then a photo of Vivian and Ethan with a private chef in a rented house kitchen. Caption. When your fiancé says, no restaurants. I want you safe and cozy. Cozy. On stolen money. My chest burned. I took screenshots. Not because I planned to ruin her. Because I planned to end the lie. And because I knew with clinical certainty that anyone willing to spend stolen money loudly was also arrogant enough to leave more evidence behind. I went deeper. Tag locations. Comments. Stories saved in highlights. And then I saw it. One tiny detail that made my skin prickle. In a highlight labeled home, Vivian posted a short video of a document on a kitchen counter. She'd been bragging about adulting and paperwork. It was only on screen for a second, but a second is plenty when you're trained to freeze frames. I recorded the story highlight, paused it, zoomed in. A routing number. A partial account number. The same last 4 digits on my bank transfer recipient. Vivian hadn't just benefited. She'd been close enough to the paperwork to record it without fear. Which meant she wasn't just a fiancé. She was a participant. I put my phone in my pocket and walked back toward the dining room. My father glanced up as I entered. His eyes sharpened. He knew. He could feel the shift. Because when you spend your life controlling people, you become sensitive to the moment they stop being controllable. After dinner, my aunt insisted on the gratitude tradition. It was her thing. Everyone says one thing they're thankful for. Usually harmless. Usually boring. My father tried to dodge it. Maybe we skip it this year, he said too quickly. My Aunt Mira frowned. Why? Because Mom mentioned money. Dad's jaw flexed. Helmini spoke, quiet but firm. We do tradition. My father forced a smile. Of course. The living room TV was already on, displaying a paused photo, last year's family group shot. My aunt had started making slideshows for holidays like she was trying to glue the family together with nostalgia. She handed me the remote. Sophia, she said, you're the tech one. Can you cast the slideshow from my phone? I took the phone. My father's gaze locked onto mine. Don't, he mouthed silently. I smiled, small and polite. Then I opened the AirPlay menu. And instead of selecting my aunt's album, I selected mine. Because while everyone ate pie, I'd built something else. Not a tantrum. Not revenge. A timeline. A clean, undeniable sequence of facts. I'd titled it, Thanksgiving Gratitude Slideshow because the best traps look like gifts. I pressed play. The first slide appeared. A childhood photo of me and Halmione in her garden, both of us smiling like nothing could touch us. Us rose around the room. My father exhaled, relieved. Then the second slide appeared. October 3rd wire on. $500,000 account screenshot. The room went silent so fast it felt like a vacuum. My father stood. Sophia, he snapped. Turn that off. I didn't. Slide 3. October 3rd wire out. $500,000 recipient info. Ethan's face drained. Vivian shot up from the couch. What is this? My Aunt Myra's voice was a whisper. Daniel. My father lunged toward the TV. I lifted my phone higher, out of reach. You touch me, I said calmly, and I add assault to your case. He froze. Because he heard the tone. Not daughter. Not family. Witness. Slide 4. A scan of the POA. Uploaded in person. Authorized by Daniel Park. Halmione made a sound. Not a sob, not a gasp. A small broken noise like a door closing in her chest. Dad's voice turned pleading. Mom, please. Halmione stared at the screen. Then at him. You used my trust like a knife, she said. And that's when I knew the night wouldn't end with me calling the police. It would end with my grandmother deciding who her son really was. Vivian tried first. She stepped forward, palms out, voice sweet. Okay, this is crazy. This has to be a misunderstanding. Sophia, you're like smart, but this is insane. I clicked the remote forward. Slide 5. Aspen Retreat. Paid October 6th. Resort invoice plus card ending in the same digits as recipient account. Vivian's smile faltered. How did you? She started. I cut her off. Public posts. You paid for your reset 3 days after the wire. Ethan stood up so fast he knocked a throw pillow to the floor. Viv, he said, voice shaking. Tell me you didn't know. Vivian's eyes darted to my father. And that was the tell. My father stepped in, voice loud now. This is harassment. You're embarrassing the family. Turn it off. I looked at him. Embarrassing. You stole $500,000 from an elderly woman, and you're worried about embarrassment? I clicked forward again. Slide 6. Recorded call. How do we paper this so she can't claw it back? Audio waveform. My father's face went gray. My Aunt Mira covered her mouth. Ethan made a choking sound. Hermione rose slowly from her chair. Like standing took everything she had. Play it, she said. Dad lunged. Ethan grabbed him. 2 sons in one room, one trying to stop the truth, one trying to keep the peace, and the truth cracking through anyway. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the living room, recorded from my phone. The night before, he'd paced the kitchen and called his attorney on speaker. I stood in the hallway, hit record, and let him tell on himself. Hey, a quick question. Hypothetically, if a parent has POA and moves money to protect it from being misused, how do we paper it so the original person can't claw it back? Call me. No mention of protecting grandma. No mention of helping Sophia. Just paper it, so it can't be clawed back. My father sagged like the recording had punched the air out of him. Hermione didn't cry. She just looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time in 81 years. Then she picked up her phone. And she dialed. Hello, she said, voice steady. Fraud department. I need to report a theft. The next morning it didn't feel real until the knock came. 2 investigators. A bank representative. A thin woman with a leather folder who introduced herself as Hermione's attorney. My father tried to talk his way out. He always did. He offered coffee. He offered explanations. He offered charm like it was currency. But charm doesn't rewrite audit logs. They collected devices from his home office. They requested records from the nonprofit where he served as treasurer, because of course he did. Of course the man who stole from his mother also had access to other people's money. By noon, the nonprofit board had suspended him pending investigation. By evening my mother, who had stayed silent through all of it, face tight with shame, packed a suitcase and left to stay with my aunt. Ethan didn't speak to Vivian. Vivian didn't call me again. She just posted a story about hard seasons and misunderstood intentions, then deleted her account 2 days later. And my father looked at me once in the kitchen when everyone else was gone. You did this, he whispered. To your own family. I stared back. No, I said. You did. I just turned the lights on. The case moved faster than my father expected. Because the evidence was clean. Because the money trail was straight. Because the victim, my grandmother, was lucid, furious, and done protecting her son from consequences. I wish I could tell you that was the end. That the knock on the door was the last time my father tried to control the story. But the truth doesn't stop once it's spoken. It spreads. In the days that followed, investigators pulled devices and froze accounts. Vivian's family hired lawyers who moved faster than guilt. Ethan stopped sleeping. My mother started remembering every paper she'd ever signed. And my grandmother, lucid, furious, and done protecting her son, decided she was finished making his life easier at the cost of her own. And through all of it, my father kept doing what he always did when he was cornered. He tried to turn the spotlight onto someone else. He couldn't change the trail. So he tried to change the people telling it. That's when the real fight started. Outside the dining room, in offices and courtrooms, and the kind of places where charm doesn't count as a defense. People think the end of a story like this is satisfying. It isn't. It's quiet. It's waking up and realizing you can't call your father when your car breaks down, because your father is a man who stole from your grandmother. It's hearing your mother's voice on the phone brittle saying, I should have stopped him. And realizing she's also talking about years of smaller things she didn't stop either. It's Ethan sending apology texts that sound like a press release. It's the grief of losing people who are still alive. Hermione moved closer to me in Seattle after everything. Not because she couldn't live alone. Because she didn't want to. She told me one night, sitting at my small kitchen table, "I gave that money because I wanted you safe." I swallowed hard. "I'm safe," I told her. She patted my hand. "Now," she said. "Now you are." A month later, the bank recovered a portion from frozen accounts. Hermione sold a small piece of land she'd been holding. Her choice, not mine. And when the dust settled, she rewired the remainder to me. This time she walked into the bank with me. This time I watched every signature. This time I held the receipt like it was proof of survival. I bought a modest house, not a mansion. Not a flex. A home. A place with a little yard where Hermione could grow peppers. A place where silence meant peace, not secrets. Ethan mailed a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A physical envelope like he thought paper made it more sincere. I opened it on my porch. He wrote that he was sorry. That he was blinded. That he missed me. That Vivian was gone. That Dad made him. He ended with, "We're still family." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I tore the letter slowly, cleanly, and dropped it into the trash. Because family isn't a word you get to use like a shield. Family is what you protect. And if someone keeps choosing harm, the most honest thing you can do is stop offering them access to you. That night, I made tea for Hermione and sat with her while she watched old dramas, laughing at plot twists like Betrayal was only something that happened on TV. I looked at her hands, still steady, still strong, and I realized the story wasn't about what my father stole. It was about what my grandmother refused to lose, her clarity, her dignity, and her right to draw a line. If you've ever been the responsible one in a family that runs on secrets, subscribe. Because next time we're talking about what happens after you expose the truth, when peace finally has room to breathe. Absolutely. Here's a big expansion, new scenes, deeper investigation, more family tension, and a longer Thanksgiving sting. I'm picking up right after the guest room/bank call moment and widening the story into true long-form pacing. By the time my father knocked on the guest room door, I'd already stopped hearing him as Dad. I heard him like I heard every suspect who tried to keep the spotlight off themselves. Pressure first, explanation second, truth never. "Sophia," he said, voice tight through the wood. "Open the door." I stayed still long enough to listen for the sounds behind his voice. Ethan's footsteps, Vivian's whisper, my Aunt Myra's sharp tone. Nothing. Just my father. Alone. Which meant he'd chosen strategy over comfort. He wasn't here to reconcile. He was here to control. I didn't open the door. I didn't have to. I spoke into the silence like I was talking to a recording. "You forged a power of attorney to move my grandmother's wire." Quiet. Then softer, too soft. "You don't understand." I pressed my fingertips to the doorknob. Not to turn it. Just to feel the cold metal and remind myself my body was real. "I understand enough," I said. "The bank is emailing me the POA. I'm going to read it. Then I'm going to ask why your signature is on it." His breath changed. A tiny sound like air escaping a pinhole. "You're tired," he said, shifting tactics. "You came in hot. Let's talk in the morning." A stalling move. If he could get me to sleep, he could get ahead of me. Call someone. Delete something. Coach Ethan. Coach Vivian. Decide which lie would be easiest for the family to swallow. "No," I said simply. "I'm not sleeping on this." The email arrived while my father was still outside the door. Power of attorney, durable uploaded. October 3rd processed. 2:14 p.m. branch. Westlake. My stomach tightened. Westlake was 20 minutes from my apartment in Seattle. He hadn't done this from back home. He'd done it near me. Close enough to breathe my air while stealing from my grandmother. I opened the PDF. The POA was clean in the way good fraud always is. Formatted, notarized, clipped together with the confidence of someone who'd done paperwork for decades and knew how to look official. The signature line for agent, Daniel Park. The signature line for principal, Sunhee Park. And there it was, my grandmother's name written in a handwriting that looked like hers at first glance. Same gentle curve, same slight hesitation. But it wasn't hers. It was an imitation. A careful costume. The notary stamp sat at the bottom like a seal of legitimacy. I zoomed in until the pixels broke. The stamp had a commission number. The stamp had a date. The stamp was from Westlake. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I did what I always do when someone thinks paper can outsmart reality. I went hunting for the human behind the ink. I opened a new note on my phone and typed notary commission hashtag, branch location, time processed, device/scan metadata. Then I remembered my grandmother's words at the table. I remember because the banker wore the purple tie. Purple tie. Not just a detail. A witness. I walked to the window, lifted the curtain a fraction, and saw my father's reflection in the glass, standing in the hallway, arms crossed, waiting for me to break. I didn't. I texted my Aunt Mira from the guest room. What branch did Halmini go to in October? Did she mention a banker? Purple tie. Her response came fast. She went to Westlake. Banker named Theo. Why? Sophia, what is happening? Theo. I saved the name like it was oxygen. Then I did something that made my hands shake. Not from fear but from finality. I emailed the bank. Subject. Urgent fraud report /PA verification request body. I believe the attached POE is forged. Please preserve all audit logs, upload metadata, and branch footage from October 3rd. Then I opened the door. My father was right there, too close, eyes sharp like he'd been waiting to pounce on weakness. You're really doing this, he said low. I'm doing what you taught me, I answered. Protecting myself. Documenting everything. He flinched like that line hurt him more than the accusation. I did it for the family, he said. There it is, I said softly. The sentence people use when they know what they did was wrong. He stepped forward. Sophia, listen. No, I said, voice flat. You listen. You don't get to corner me like I'm 16. You don't get to tell me this is family business like that makes it holy. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than us because you live across the country and have a fancy job. I think I'm better than stealing from an old woman, I said. He stared at me. Then he did something I never expected. He smiled. Not warm. Not loving. A smile that said, You don't know the full story yet. You want the full story? He murmured. Fine. And in that moment I realized he wasn't planning to confess. He was planning to recruit me into the lie. We went into the kitchen because he wanted home turf, warm lighting, family photos, normalcy. He poured tea like he was a man who hadn't just shattered my trust. Your grandmother is stubborn, he began, like this was going to be a charming anecdote. She doesn't understand modern life. She hoards, she worries, she thinks money solves everything. I didn't speak. I let him fill the silence with his version. She wired that money because she's afraid, he continued. Afraid you'll struggle. Afraid you'll end up alone. But Sophia, you're doing fine. You have a career. You're not desperate. He set the cup down gently. We needed to redirect it. Redirect. Not steal. Not forge. Redirect like it was a river he had authority over. For what? I asked, forcing the words out carefully. For Vivian's Instagram? His eyes flashed. Don't be cruel. Cruel. Like cruelty lived in my question, not in his forgery. Dad, I said, tell me right now, did you forge Halmini's signature? He held my gaze. Then smoothly he said, It's complicated. A non-answer dressed up as maturity. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Did Ethan know? I asked. His mouth tightened. Ethan knew enough. And that meant Ethan knew and stayed quiet. My father leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret instead of confessing a crime. Vivian's family has expectations, he said. They're old money adjacent. Not wealthy like people think, but they have standards. Ethan needed to show stability. He needed to show he could provide. He said provide like Ethan was a soldier preparing for war. My throat went tight. So you stole from Grandma to buy Ethan respect. He slammed his hand on the counter just once. Watch your mouth. There it was. The reflex. Authority. Control. Then he softened again too fast. Sophia, he said, I am asking you to be smart. Don't blow this up. Don't humiliate your brother. Don't devastate your grandmother with a spectacle. We can fix it quietly. Fix it quietly. The phrase that had trapped the women in my family for generations. I stared at him and saw the whole pattern. How he coached my mom into swallowing disappointment, how he trained Ethan to avoid conflict, how he taught me that truth was less important than peace. Peace as long as he got to define it. You can't fix forgery quietly, I said. That's not a plumbing issue. That's a felony. His eyes narrowed. You'd call the police on your own father? The question was a blade. He expected guilt to do what logic couldn't. I surprised myself with my answer. I wouldn't be calling the police on my father, I said. I'd be calling them on a stranger wearing my father's face. For a moment he looked like he might cry. Then his expression hardened. Fine, he said. If you want war, you'll get it. And he walked out. Just like that. Tea untouched. Knife still on the platter. And me standing there realizing this wasn't going to be solved with one confrontation. This was going to be solved with evidence, strategy, and a line in the sand. My family still thinks of me as the quiet one. The good girl. The one who left and didn't come back to fight. They confuse silence with softness. But silence is how you survive in a house where the loudest person always wins. In my world, digital forensics, loudness doesn't matter. Only trails do. So while everyone tried to pretend dessert would save the night, I sat in the guest room and started building a timeline. Transfer in. Transfer out. Recipient account. POA forged. Notary stamp. Branch location. Now the bigger question, where did the money actually go after it hit that first recipient account? Because nobody spends $500,000 in one swipe without leaving a wake. I opened Vivian's public posts again, not because I cared about her aesthetics, but because wealthy-looking people are careless about proof. Luxury is louder than guilt. I pulled timestamps. Aspen booking date. Watch boutique tag. Chef's handle. Then I did something most people don't realize is possible. I searched the chef. Not on Instagram, on business platforms. Reservation systems. Review sites. Vendor profiles. Within 10 minutes I found his company's website. Within 30 minutes I found the deposit policy. Within 45 minutes I had a guess at the deposit amount. And that guess matched a charge I saw in the recipient account's activity log, because I'd requested transaction-level detail from the bank and flagged it as active fraud. Sophia Park, forensic specialist. I didn't need a projector yet. I needed structure. A story so clean even the most denial-addicted relative couldn't twist it. I added a new column in my notes. Who knew? Dad. Forged signature. Submitted POA in person. Ethan knew enough. A Vivian. Benefited plus posted plus had paperwork visible. A mom silent at table. Unknown involvement. A Aunt Mira. Suspicious, not complicit. A grandma victim lucid furious. Then I paused. And I asked myself something that made my stomach drop. Why do this now? My father wasn't broke. He wasn't desperate. He had a job. A house. A reputation. A nonprofit board seat. So why risk it? Unless he'd already been risking things elsewhere. Unless this wasn't his first redirect. My fingers hovered over my phone. Then I texted Aunt Mira again. Dad's nonprofit, what's the name of it? She replied. Harbor Lights Community Fund. Why are you asking? Harbor Lights. My chest tightened. Because I knew that name. Not from family dinners, from a case briefing at work months ago. A vendor fraud scheme involving a small nonprofit in Seattle called Harbor Lights. At the time, it hadn't been big enough to become headline news. But it had been big enough to make it into a risk bulletin. I sat very still. Then I opened my laptop. And I typed the nonprofit's name into my internal memory, like I was unlocking a door I hadn't realized was in my house. If my father was doing this to his mother, I needed to know what else he'd been doing to strangers, because then this wasn't just family betrayal. This was a pattern. And patterns don't stop because you ask nicely. The next day, Thanksgiving morning, my brother cornered me in the hallway. He looked wrecked. No sleep. Red eyes. That raw face men get when their world is collapsing, but they haven't been taught how to name the emotion. Soph, he whispered. Please. Please what? I asked. Please don't do anything today, he said. Just let Dad talk to Grandma. Let him fix it. I stared at him. Ethan, I said quietly, do you hear yourself? Let him fix it. He forged her signature. Ethan flinched. He swallowed. It was supposed to be temporary. Temporary theft. Temporary fraud. Temporary betrayal. That's not a thing, I said. He dragged a hand down his face. Vivian didn't know. I held his gaze until he broke eye contact. Okay, I said. Let's not lie to each other. That's the only way I can even stand here. Ethan's voice cracked. She didn't know at first. Ah, there it was. The truth always arrives in pieces when someone's afraid of it. At first, I repeated. She thought it was a loan, he admitted. Dad said Grandma wanted to help us get started. And then, I pressed. Ethan closed his eyes. And then she started buying things. And I didn't stop it. Because you wanted the life, I said, not cruel, just naming it. He whispered. Because I wanted her. That one almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered my grandmother's face at the table, how she'd looked at my father like she was remeasuring her whole life. I remembered the forged signature. I remembered the way my father smiled and said, if you want war. Ethan, I said, voice steady, I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to protect Grandma. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough. Don't, he said. Please. If this comes out, Vivian's family will destroy us. I stared at his hand on my wrist. A flashback hit me. Another hand years ago, a tighter grip, my father's voice. Don't make a scene. I peeled Ethan's fingers off gently. I don't care what Vivian's family thinks, I said. I care what the law thinks. I care what Grandma deserves. Ethan's eyes filled. You're going to ruin us. I leaned closer. You ruined yourselves when you cashed stolen comfort. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. And as he walked away, I understood something sharp and sad. Ethan wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing his illusion. If you want to expose someone at a holiday dinner, you have to understand what holidays really are. They're not about food. They're about narrative. Who sits where? Who serves first? Who gets praised? Who gets dismissed? Who gets told you're too sensitive? Holidays are the stage where families rehearse the lies that keep them together. So I didn't come to the table swinging. I came to the table with a plan that would make the truth unavoidable. While everyone bustled around the kitchen, I asked my Aunt Mira if the living room TV could connect to AirPlay. Oh yeah, she said. We use it for Christmas movies. Perfect. I checked the Wi-Fi network name and password. Then quietly, I turned on my phone's hotspot and named it something harmless, Myra's iPhone, because if my father tried to sabotage the house Wi-Fi, and he absolutely would, I needed my own connection. Then I did the most important part. I made it look like a gift. I told my aunt I wanted to show a gratitude slideshow for Grandma. She melted immediately. Oh, Sophia, she said, eyes soft. She'll love that. I smiled like a good niece and built a weapon out of receipts. Not angry slides. Not messy accusations. A timeline. Simple. Clean. Date stamped. A Grandma's wire receipt. A account statement showing transfer and /out. POA document with Daniel's signature. A branch processing timestamp. A notary commission number. A Vivian's Aspen booking invoice. A watch boutique receipt. Chef deposit. A screenshot of Vivian's paperwork. Highlight showing the account digits. A final slide, recorded call transcript. I kept every slide readable from across the room. No tiny text. No clutter. Because the goal wasn't to impress anyone. The goal was to leave them nowhere to hide. As I worked, I heard my father in the kitchen, laughing too loudly, telling my mom to relax, playing the part of the man who held everything together. I felt the old reflex to shrink, to avoid, to keep the peace. Then I looked at the forged signature again, and something in me hardened into clarity. Peace that requires silence is not peace. It's captivity. At the table, the turkey looked perfect. My father made sure of it. He stood, carving like a man conducting an orchestra, distributing meat as if generosity could erase guilt. He gave Grandma the best slice. He gave my mom a nice piece, sweetheart. He gave Ethan extra. He offered Vivian dark meat, because you're so tiny. Performance. And the whole time his eyes tracked me. Not openly. In flashes. Like he could sense the device in my pocket, the evidence waiting, the story about to change. When dessert came, he tried again. He slid an envelope across the table to me with 2 fingers like it was charity. From Grandma, he said, voice warm enough for an audience. I looked at Halmione. Her brow creased. Confusion. Genuine confusion. Dad's lie was so bold he tried to make Grandma the mouthpiece of it. I opened the envelope. The check read, $200 in my father's handwriting in the memo line. Love, Halmione. My stomach turned. I didn't react, not yet. I smiled. Thank you, I said, and watched my father's shoulders loosen, because he thought the check was the muzzle. He thought if he gave me a small gift, I'd feel petty for bringing up the big one. He thought I'd swallow the injustice because that's what I'd always been trained to do. Then my grandmother lifted her glass for the toast, and my father's face tightened like he'd heard thunder in the distance. My family, Halmione began, voice small but steady. Thank you for coming. I am grateful you are here. She looked at Ethan. You are engaged. This makes me happy. Vivian squeezed Ethan's hand, eyes shining with practiced innocence. Halmione's gaze moved to me. Sophia, she said, and her eyes softened. You work hard. You make your own life. My chest tightened. Then she smiled. And I am grateful I could help you, she continued. With the money I sent. My father's fork stopped midair. Halmione's voice was clear as glass. $500,000, she said, proud. So you can buy a home. So you are safe. Silence hit the room like a dropped plate. Everyone turned toward me. My father's eyes pinned me in place. This was the moment he wanted to control. So I did the simplest thing possible. I lifted the check. I smiled at my grandmother with genuine affection. And I said, Halmione, thank you for the $200. The air changed. My Aunt Myra's mouth fell open. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Ethan went pale. Vivian's smile snapped, just for a second like a rubber band breaking. And my father stopped carving. He looked up. And for the first time I saw real fear on his face. Dad stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Sophia, he warned, voice sharp. Stop. Halmione blinked, confused. 200. My father forced a laugh. Mom, she's joking. You know, Sophia. I am not joking, I said gently. Dad's voice rose. Sophia, this is not the time. Halmione looked between us, the pride in her face draining into suspicion. What is happening? She asked. My father pivoted to the room, palms out. Everyone, please. Mom is on medication. She's been mixing numbers. Halmione's eyes narrowed. Daniel. He kept going, trying to drown her in his narrative. She gets confused. You all know that. Sophia's taking this the wrong way. There was never. Stop, Halmione said. Dad froze. Halmione's voice shook now. Anger breaking through sadness. I am old, she said. Not stupid. Then she turned to me. Sophia, she whispered. Did you get my money? I swallowed. No, I said. I didn't. My father lunged toward me. I stepped back and lifted my phone. Don't touch me, I said calmly. Sit down. His face twisted. How dare you? I tapped the AirPlay icon. The living room TV flickered. My Aunt Mira gasped. Sophia, what? The first slide appeared. A childhood photo of me and Halmione in her garden. A soft rose automatically, habit reflex. Dad exhaled, relieved. Then I swiped. Slide 2. October 3rd, wire in. $500,000. The room went dead silent. Dad's relief died in his throat. I swiped again. Slide 3. October 3rd, wire out. $500,000. Recipient account ending 4417. Vivian made a small noise. Ethan whispered. Oh my God. Dad stepped forward again, but my Aunt Mira stood up between us. Daniel, she said, voice like steel. Don't you move. My father stared at his sister like he'd forgotten she had teeth. I swiped again. Slide 4. PO document submitted in person, signed by Daniel Park. My mother covered her mouth. Halmione's hands trembled in her lap. No, Dad said, voice breaking. This is. Sophia is. I swiped again. Slide 5. Aspen retreat invoice. Paid October 6. Vivian stood abruptly. That's not. I swiped. Slide 6. Watch boutique receipt. I swiped. Slide 7. Private chef deposit. Ethan's face contorted like he might vomit. Hermione let out a sound, small, wounded. You used my money, she whispered. Dad snapped. I did it for the family. And the second he shouted it, the whole room felt it. That wasn't innocence. That was justification. I swiped to the final slide. Recorded call transcript. How do we paper this so she can't claw it back? Hermione's eyes lifted to my father's. You stole, she said quietly. Dad's voice dropped into a plea. Mom, please. I can fix it. I can bring it back. Hermione stood. Slowly. Carefully. With the dignity of a woman who had survived things my father would never understand. She picked up her phone. And she dialed. Hello, she said, voice steady now. Fraud department. I need to report a theft. My father made a broken sound. Ethan sank back onto the couch, hands over his face. Vivian whispered. Ethan, we need to go. And my Aunt Mira. My Aunt Mira looked at my father like he was no longer her brother. Like he was simply a man who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The call didn't end the night. Started it. Because once Hermione reported the theft, the world outside our house finally entered the room. A fraud specialist asked questions on speaker. Dates. Amounts. Account numbers. Hermione answered with terrifying clarity. My father tried to speak twice. Hermione shut him down both times with a single look. My mother sat rigid, tears running silently down her face, like her body was leaking the grief she'd been swallowing for years. Ethan couldn't stop shaking. Vivian stood by the door, clutching her purse like a life raft, eyes darting between everyone as if she could calculate which story would save her. At one point, she whispered to my brother, "Tell them you didn't know." And I watched Ethan's face, watched the fight inside him. Love, fear, shame, loyalty, survival. He looked at me. For the first time all weekend, he really looked at me. And I could see he wanted me to save him. Like I always had. Like I always did. But I didn't. I just said softly, "Tell the truth." Ethan's eyes filled. He nodded once. And that single nod told me something important. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because the truth doesn't just destroy lies. It destroys alliances. And in the wreckage, everyone scrambles to decide who they can still afford to be. Hermione ended the call. She set her phone down. Then she looked at my father, her son, like she was sealing a door. You will not use my love against me, she said. Dad's voice cracked. Mom. Go, she said simply. And my father, proud Daniel Park, the man who carved the turkey like a king, stood there for a long moment, eyes wet, face ruined. And then he turned and walked out of the room. But as he passed me, he leaned close enough that only I could hear. This isn't finished, he whispered. And I knew he was right. Because men like my father don't surrender. They retaliate. The house didn't sleep. It just dimmed. People drifted to bedrooms the way survivors drift after a storm, silent, stunned, pretending walls can keep consequences out. I lay awake in the guest room with my phone charging on the nightstand like it was a defibrillator. Every time the screen lit up with a new email from the bank, my pulse answered it. At 6:12 a.m., I heard the front door open. At 6:13 a.m., I heard it close. At 6:14 a.m., my mother's voice, thin as paper, said, "Daniel, please." Then nothing. I sat up, heart battering my ribs. I wasn't afraid he'd hurt me. Not physically. I was afraid he'd do what he always did when cornered. Make everything worse before anyone could stop him. I slipped out of the room barefoot and moved down the hallway. The kitchen light was on. My father stood by the sink, tie already knotted like he'd dressed for court out of sheer denial. A travel mug sat on the counter half full. He looked like a man trying to outrun a tsunami on a bicycle. My mother sat at the table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked at me like she'd been waiting for me to appear. Like she didn't know how to say, "He's leaving." "Morning," my father said, voice calm enough to be insulting. "You're going somewhere," I said. He took a sip of coffee like I'd asked if he wanted more toast. "To the office," he said. "People are counting on me." "People were counting on Hermione," I said quietly. And you stole anyway. His eyes flashed. Watch it. There it was. That old reflex again, discipline as a substitute for accountability. My mother whispered, Daniel, please don't. Don't what? He snapped at her. Then he softened immediately like flipping a switch. Honey, you're exhausted. Go lie down. My mother didn't move. She looked at him the way women look at men they've been afraid of for a long time. Then she looked at me. And I saw it. Not just grief. A question. If I don't stop him, will you? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. Then a knock, firm and official. My father's body stiffened. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed. Like consequences had the audacity to arrive on schedule. I followed him to the front door. He opened it. 2 men in plain clothes stood on the porch. One held a folder. The other had a small black case that screamed devices. Behind them, a woman in a blazer, bank fraud investigator, stood with a tablet. Daniel Park? The man with the folder asked. Yes, my father said, with the practiced politeness of someone who believed manners could outrank law. We're here regarding an allegation of wire fraud and forgery. The man continued. We'd like to ask you some questions, and we have a preservation request for any devices used to submit documentation. My father glanced at me, and I understood in a flash. He thought he had more time. He'd been planning something. Maybe to shift money. Maybe to coach Vivian. Maybe to plant a story. But Halmiani had made the call herself. And when an elderly victim is clear, coherent and angry, systems move faster than families expect. My father smiled. Of course, he said. Come in. He said it like he was inviting them to admire his kitchen. They stepped inside. And in that moment my childhood house stopped being a home. It became a crime scene. The investigator with the black case introduced himself as if this were routine. Probably was. People with charming faces commit crimes every day. My father tried to keep control by narrating. I'm happy to cooperate, he said, walking them toward his office. This is a misunderstanding. My mother is stressed, my daughter is overreacting. The woman from the bank didn't even blink. Mr. Park, she said evenly. We have audit logs showing the POA was presented in person, scanned at Branch Westlake, and linked to your signature as agent. My father's jaw tightened. He opened the office door. The room smelled like printer ink and expensive wood polish. Diplomas on the wall. Family photos framed like proof he couldn't be what he was. The investigator lifted a small evidence tag. We'll need any laptops, desktops, external drives, and mobile devices used in October, he said. My father laughed. You think I did this on a computer? The investigator didn't react. My father's humor bounced off him and fell dead. I need to call my attorney, my father said. Of course, the folder man replied. You're not under arrest at this moment. But we are preserving evidence. My father's eyes flicked to his desk. Just a flick. But I saw it. A second phone. Face down. Not his regular one. A burner. Or a business phone. Or whatever polite label people use when they're hiding a second life. I stepped forward. That one too, I said calmly. My father's head snapped toward me. Sophia. The investigator followed my gaze and reached for it. My father's hand moved fast. Not to grab the phone. To shove the desk drawer shut. A small movement. A stupid movement. The kind you make when panic overrides intelligence. The folder man's eyes sharpened. Mr. Park, he said quietly, please step back. My father froze. The bank investigator tapped on her tablet. We also have an internal note, she said, voice cool, that you requested a specific teller for the POA scan. My father's face went slightly gray. The purple tie. Theo. He hadn't just walked into the bank. He'd arranged it. He'd managed it. He'd made the fraud feel like a transaction. My mother appeared in the doorway behind me, silent tears sliding down her face. Ethan stumbled in from the hallway, hair messy, eyes glassy. Vivian wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. Vivian always knew when to disappear before a room got ugly. Ethan stared at the investigators, then at my father, then at me. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The investigator with the black case held out his hand. Mr. Park, he said. Devices, please. My father's voice turned sharp. I said I'll call my attorney. You can, the folder man replied. After we secure the devices. My father's gaze slid to my mother. To Ethan. To me. Calculating. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He smiled again. That same thin, controlled smile from last night. And he said, fine. Then he reached into the drawer. Not for the burner. For a thick manila envelope. He handed it to the folder man like it was a gift. Here, he said. Since we're doing this, you should have all of it. The folder man looked down, brows tightening. What is this? My father's eyes stayed on me. Receipts, he said softly. For the things Sophia doesn't know yet. My throat went dry. Because that sentence wasn't cooperation. It was a threat. The envelope sat on the coffee table in the living room, while everyone pretended not to stare at it. The investigators didn't open it immediately. They asked standard questions. They took notes. They tagged devices. My father answered with smooth, careful half-truths, like he'd practiced them in the mirror. Ethan hovered like a ghost. My mother remained seated, hands pressed to her lap, face utterly blank, like the only way she could survive was to stop feeling. Hermione came into the room last. She moved slowly, but there was no weakness in her posture. She sat down across from my father. And she didn't look away. My son, she said quietly, you stole from me. My father's expression softened into wounded innocence. Mom, he said, I managed it. Hermione's eyes flashed. Thief uses pretty word. Then she looked at the investigators. Open envelope, she said. One of them did. He pulled out a stack of printed emails, a few notarized forms, and most chilling, an agreement labeled Temporary Family Loan Structure with a logo at the top. Not my father's nonprofit. Not a bank. A law firm. Vivian's family lawyer. Ethan made a strangled sound. No! My heart thumped hard. Because suddenly Vivian's Instagram perfect life wasn't just careless spending. It was infrastructure. It was planning. The investigator flipped pages. This appears to be a drafted promissory note, he said. My father nodded. See? It was always going to be paid back. From what income? I asked, voice steady. My father's eyes narrowed. Ethan whispered, Dad. The investigator turned another page. This note references collateral, he said. A property interest. My stomach turned. Collateral. Whose property? I demanded. My father leaned back slightly. And then, like he was talking about the weather, he said, Your grandmother's house. My mother made a choking sound. Hermione's face went stone still. Ethan's knees bent like he might collapse. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. You tried to use Hermione's house as collateral, I said, voice shaking now despite my best efforts. For a loan she never agreed to, using a signature you forged. My father lifted his hands like a preacher. You don't understand legal structures, he said. Vivian's family wanted guarantees. Ethan needed stability. This was the cleanest path. Cleanest. He said it like morality was about neat paperwork. Hermione spoke softly, each word a nail. You used my home, she said. Like it belonged to you. My father swallowed. Mom, I was protecting it. From who? I snapped. He looked at me. And the mask slipped just enough. From you, he said. The room went dead. Ethan stared at him, horrified. My mother's face twisted. Like she'd just been stabbed by a truth she'd always suspected. Hermione didn't flinch. She just nodded once, slowly. As I thought, she said. Then she turned to the investigators. Take him, she said simply. My father leaned forward, voice low and urgent. Mom, if you do this, the family will never recover. Hermione's gaze didn't waver. Family already broke, she said. You broke it. And that's when my father did the one thing that proved he still believed he could win. He looked at Ethan and said, Tell them. Ethan's face crumpled. Tell them what? Ethan whispered. My father's voice went sharp. Tell them Sophia knew. My blood went cold. Because if he could flip the narrative, if he could drag me into the mud, then my credibility would crack. And he could turn wire fraud into family dispute. A dirty trick. An old trick. But this time he'd underestimated the one person in the room who didn't run on family loyalty. The bank investigator. She lifted her tablet and said, "We have audit logs showing Sophia Park did not authorize or initiate this transaction." Then she added almost casually, "We also have camera footage from Branch Westlake." My father went still. And in that stillness I saw it. He hadn't expected that. He'd expected paper to beat truth. But cameras don't care about your story. They care about your face. After the investigators left, with devices, copies, and a promise of follow-up, the house collapsed into silence so thick it felt like suffocation. Ethan went outside and threw up in the bushes. My mother stood at the sink and washed the same clean plate over and over like she could scrub the last decade off her hands. Hermione sat in the living room, staring at nothing. I sat beside her. I didn't touch her. I didn't want to make her comfort me. After a long time she spoke. "Daniel was always good boy," she said softly. "Smart. Helpful. Everyone praise him." I swallowed. "Sometimes praise makes people think they're entitled," I said. Hermione nodded slowly. "Yes. Entitled." Then she looked at me, eyes wet but sharp. "Sophia," she asked, "is this only my money?" The question hit like a blow. Because she'd sensed it too. Fraud isn't usually a one-time thing. It's a habit. I hesitated, then said the truth. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think we should find out." That afternoon, while everyone else moved like sleepwalkers, I opened my laptop and looked up Harbor Lights Community Fund. My father's nonprofit. I searched public filings, board minutes, treasurer reports, vendor lists. At first glance, normal. Then I saw it. A vendor payment pattern. Small enough to hide. Consistent enough to matter. Payments to an LLC that looked like a service provider. Same LLC name format as the recipient account that took Hermione's money. A chill crawled up my spine. I cross-referenced the LLC registration. It was registered to a mailbox service. Of course it was. I dug deeper. And there it was, one tiny piece of carelessness. A phone number listed on a filing. I typed it into a database I had access to through work. It linked back to a second email address. An email address tied to my father. I leaned back, breath shallow. If my father had been siphoning money from the nonprofit, then Hermione wasn't his first victim. She was just the one who made it personal. I thought about the envelope, the promissory note, Vivian's family lawyer. This wasn't just helping Ethan. This was a man building a fraud ecosystem and calling it family. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling, because I knew what came next. If this expanded beyond our family, it would blow up bigger than Thanksgiving. It would blow up into reputations, jobs, community trust. And my father, cornered, would not go quietly. That night, Ethan knocked on my guest room door. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. His voice was hoarse. "Can I come in?" I nodded. He sat on the edge of the bed like he didn't trust himself to stand. "I didn't know about the house," he whispered. I believed him. Not because Ethan was innocent, he wasn't. But because he wasn't smart enough to plan collateral with lawyers. Ethan's crime was simpler. Wanting comfort more than truth. He swallowed hard. "Vivian's dad called," he said. My stomach tightened. "Already?" Ethan nodded. He said Vivian has to protect herself. He said he'll handle it." "Handle it how?" I asked. Ethan's eyes flicked up to mine, terrified. "He said Vivian's family will claim they were victims too," Ethan whispered. "That dad tricked them. And they'll let me take the fall if I don't cooperate." I exhaled slowly. This was the pivot point. The moment where Ethan either told the truth or became my father's shield. "What did you say?" I asked. Ethan's face crumpled. "I said I'd do anything," he admitted. "I said I'd fix it." "Ethan," I said, voice tight, "you can't fix felony with family loyalty." He nodded, tears spilling now, helpless and ashamed. "I loved her," he whispered. I thought if I gave her what she wanted, she'd love me back the same way. That broke something in me. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. Ethan wasn't evil. He was weak. And weakness, paired with a strong manipulator like my father, becomes a weapon. I leaned forward. "You're going to get a call from investigators," I said. "They'll ask if you knew. They'll ask if you benefited. They'll ask who else was involved." Ethan wiped his face with his sleeve like a child. What do I do? He whispered. I held his gaze. You tell the truth, I said. The whole truth. And you return every penny you can. Ethan flinched. Dad will. I know, I said quietly. Dad will punish you. Dad will call you ungrateful. Dad will say you're betraying him. I paused. And Vivian's family will try to bury you. Ethan's hands trembled. So what's left? He whispered. I looked at him and said the only honest thing. Your conscience. And Grandma. Ethan's jaw worked. He nodded slowly. I'll do it, he said, voice cracking. I'll cooperate. He stood, then hesitated at the door. Soph, he said softly. He told me something today. My stomach tightened again. What? Ethan swallowed. He said if this goes to court, he whispered, you'll learn why he really needed the money. My pulse jumped. What does that mean? I demanded. Ethan shook his head, tears returning. I don't know, he said. But he said it's bigger than us. Then he left. And I stood alone in the guest room staring at the wall. Because that sounded like the kind of line people drop when there's a second crime hiding behind the first. And if my father had something bigger buried, then my slideshow was only the beginning. At 2:06 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email from the bank investigator. Subject line: Additional account identified. And the account holder name attached to the recipient chain made my stomach drop. Not Vivian. Not Ethan. Not my father. My mother. The email hit at 2:06 a.m. like a slap in the dark. Subject: Additional account identified from Bank Fraud Investigator Westlake. I opened it with my thumb already sweating. We traced the recipient chain from the outgoing wire. A secondary account was used as an intermediary for disbursements. Account holder name: Grace Santos Park. My mother. I sat up so fast the blanket fell off my legs. For a full 10 seconds my mind refused to assemble the meaning. Tried to protect me with disbelief. My mother didn't even have a banking app. She wrote passwords on sticky notes. She still called Wi-Fi the internet. She cried when she forgot her email login. But the name on the account was her name. And that meant one of two things: either she was part of it, or her name was being used like a borrowed coat. I slid out of bed and padded into the hallway. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels staged, like everyone was holding their breath in separate rooms. A dim light glowed under the kitchen door. I opened it. My mother sat at the table, staring at a mug that had gone cold. Her hair was pulled back sloppily. No makeup. No armor. Just a woman who looked like she'd been awake for years. She looked up when I entered. And before I could speak, she whispered, I knew you'd come. My throat tightened. Mom, why is your name on an account connected to the wire transfer? Her eyes closed like she'd been waiting for that exact question. I didn't take your grandmother's money, she said quickly. Too quickly. Like she needed me to believe that before anything else. I didn't say you did, I replied. I asked why your name is on it. She pressed her fingers to her temple, breathing shallow. Then she said in a voice that sounded like glass, because your father put everything in my name. My stomach lurched. What does that mean? She opened her eyes. And in them I saw something I'd never allowed myself to see fully as a kid: fear. Not fear of a stranger. Fear of the man who lived in our house. Grace, don't be dramatic. My father's voice echoed in my head. Words I'd heard him use like a leash. My mother swallowed hard. A long time ago, she said. Daniel said it was smarter. For taxes. For liability. For the non-profit. He said. If anything ever happened, it would protect us. Protect who? I asked softly. She flinched. The family. There it was again. The phrase. The spell. And you agreed? I asked. She let out a small broken laugh. Sophia, you think I agreed like it was a choice. Silence stretched between us. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder, old, worn, stuffed with papers that had been opened and closed so many times the edges were soft. She slid it across the table. Look, she whispered. I opened it. Statements. Old accounts. A checking account under my mother's name, opened years ago. A second savings account. A credit line. All under Grace Santos Park. My hands went cold. This is... I started. It's what he used, she said quietly. For bills. For transfers. For the nonprofit. He said it was simpler if everything ran through one place. And you never questioned it? My voice came out sharper than I meant. My mother's face crumpled. I questioned it, she whispered. I fought him. Not like you fight. Not like you can. But I tried. She looked down at her hands. And every time I pushed, he reminded me what happens when I make things hard. He reminded me of money. Of reputations. Of how I'd be the one blamed if the family fell apart. My chest burned. I pictured my father, calm, charming, carving turkey, using the same calm voice to trap my mother inside a story she couldn't exit. I exhaled slowly. Mom. Did you know about Halmiani's wire? She shook her head. Fast. I knew something was wrong, she admitted. I knew he was panicking. He kept making calls. He kept asking me if I'd seen any mail from the bank. And then her voice snapped. And then he told me I needed to sign something. My spine went rigid. What did you sign? She swallowed. He said it was a form. For the nonprofit. He said the board needed it. He said it was routine. My pulse hammered. And you signed. Tears filled her eyes. I signed. Because I've signed things for 22 years. Because he's always had a reason. Because he always made me feel stupid for asking too many questions. I stared at her. In my head, I was suddenly 13 again. Listening to my father tell my mother she was confused. Watching her apologize for existing. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced the words out steady. Mom, I need you to tell the investigators everything. Everything you remember. Every account. Every paper. Every time he made you sign something. She nodded, trembling. I will, she whispered. Then she added, barely audible. But Sophia, he's going to try to destroy me. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Let him try, I said softly. He already used your name as a shield. We're not letting him use you as a scapegoat too. And for the first time, my mother looked at me like I wasn't her child anymore. Like I was a door. A way out. Her phone buzzed on the table. She flinched. Color-eyed Vivian Cross. My mother stared at the screen like it was a snake. I stared at it like it was evidence. Answer, I said. My mother shook her head. I can't. You can, I replied gently. Put it on speaker. She hesitated. Then tapped accept with a trembling thumb. Hello, my mother said, voice thin. Vivian's voice poured through the speaker. Bright, forced, too cheerful for 7:11 a.m. Grace. Hi. I'm so sorry to bother you. Is Ethan with you? My mother's eyes flicked to me. No, my mother said. He's not here. Vivian exhaled, and the cheer slipped just a little. Okay. Look, I just want to say. There's been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Vivian continued, faster now, like speed could outrun guilt. My dad spoke to our attorney, and they said the best thing is to clarify what happened before anyone says anything dramatic. My mother's hands clenched. Vivian lowered her voice. Grace, I need you to understand, I didn't know it was stolen money. I leaned closer to the phone. My mother swallowed. Vivian, there was a forged signature. Vivian's voice tightened. I know, and it's horrible. But Daniel told us it was family planning. He said, son, he wanted to help Ethan. My mother flinched at my father's first name. In our house, my mother almost never said it out loud. Vivian kept going. And now people are saying felony. Fraud. Jail. Her voice cracked at jail like she was the victim of the word. My family can't be connected to that. There it was. Not remorse. Brand protection. So what are you calling for? I asked, and my mother's head snapped toward me. Vivian froze. Who, Sophia, I said calmly. I'm here. A beat of silence. Then Vivian's tone changed, sharper, colder. Oh, she said. Of course you are. My mother whispered, Sophia. I ignored it. Vivian inhaled. Okay, Sophia. Let's be adults. This doesn't have to get messy. It's already messy, I said. A $500,000 wire disappeared in 3 minutes. Vivian's voice hardened. My family's lawyer says the money was transferred under a legal instrument. That's not theft. Forgery is theft, I replied. She hissed, frustrated. Then tried a new tactic, soft, persuasive. Sophia, I heard you're doing well. You have a career. You have your own money. Isn't this a little extreme? My blood went hot. She was trying to shame me for wanting what was mine, for defending my grandmother. My mother's face tightened, but she stayed silent, years of training keeping her quiet. I leaned closer to the speaker. Vivian, I said softly, tell me something. When you posted Aspen, did you feel guilty? Silence. Then Vivian snapped. This isn't about my feelings. Exactly, I said. It's about your choices. Vivian's breath came quick. Fine. Here's what's going to happen. My family is returning what we can. What you can, I repeated. Yes, she said defensively. Some of it was already paid. Deposits. Non-refundable things. Convenient, I said. She ignored that. And Ethan is going to tell investigators he didn't know. He was misled. He was emotionally manipulated. My stomach dropped. She was building a narrative. One that saved her and sacrificed my brother. Vivian continued, voice icy. And Daniel will be handled separately. My mother made a small sound. Handled. Vivian's pause was too long. Then she said very carefully, my family doesn't like public problems. A threat wrapped in polite words. I spoke slowly so she couldn't mishear me. If you lie to investigators, I'll hand them your posts, your receipts, and the footage of your paperwork highlight. And I'll make sure the court sees your timeline. Vivian's breath hitched. Then suddenly she switched again, sweet as syrup. Sophia, she purred. You don't want to go against my family. My mother flinched as if Vivian had raised her hand through the phone. I felt something settle into place in my chest. A calm. Watch me, I said. Vivian went silent. Then she hung up. My mother's face was pale. She's going to ruin Ethan, my mother whispered. I stood up. Then Ethan needs to beat her to the truth, I said. And Mom? You need to beat Dad. My mother looked up at me, eyes wet. How? I picked up the folder of statements. We start by giving investigators everything, I said. And then we follow the money through every account he hid behind your name. My phone buzzed, this time a text from Ethan Soff. Dad just called me. He said if I talk to anyone, he'll tell them what you really did in Seattle. My stomach turned, because I hadn't really done anything. Unless he'd been using my name too. The next day, we met with Detective Monica Hale from the Financial Crimes Unit, a liaison who worked hand in hand with the bank's fraud team. My mother sat beside me, shoulders hunched, clutching her purse like it contained her spine. Hermione came too. She wore her nicest coat and lipstick the color of quiet fury. Monica introduced herself properly this time. She slid a folder across the table. Miss Park, she said to Hermione, I'm sorry this happened, but I want you to know. Your clarity yesterday mattered. It accelerated everything. Hermione nodded once. Monica turned to me. Sophia, we recovered branch footage. My pulse jumped. She opened a laptop and clicked play. The video showed the Westlake branch lobby. People milling. A small line. Then my father walked into frame. Smooth suit, confident stride, face composed like he owned the air. And beside him, Vivian. Not Ethan. Vivian. She wore that same cream sweater. Her signature innocent rich girl uniform. My mother made a small sound and covered her mouth. Monica paused the footage. A teller approached. Monica zoomed in. The teller's tie was unmistakable. Purple. Hermione leaned forward, eyes sharp. Theo, she whispered. Monica nodded. He's cooperating. He reported feeling pressured after seeing the news of the fraud report. He remembers your father by name. My father handed over a document. Vivian leaned in, pointing at a section like she was correcting the layout. Then on camera, my father guided Vivian's hand to the signature line like a teacher. My stomach dropped. Monica rewound and played it again, slower. Vivian signed. Not my grandmother. Not my father. Vivian. My mother let out a broken breath. She signed for Sunhee, my mother whispered. She signed like it was nothing. Monica closed the laptop. This footage is significant, she said. It shows coordination. It shows intent. Hermione's voice trembled with rage. Pretty girl, she said. Pretty lies. Monica looked at me. We also traced a portion of the funds into an account under Grace's name, she said, nodding to my mother. But based on her statement, we believe she was used as an intermediary. My mother's eyes filled. I didn't know, she whispered. Monica's expression softened slightly. We'll evaluate that. But cooperation helps. Then Monica slid a second folder across the table. And Sophia, she said, voice careful, your father has been using another identifier in his communications. My pulse thudded. Monica flipped the folder open and showed me a printed page. A login, a username, a password reset email, and the name attached to it, Sophia Park. I went cold. He created accounts in my name? I whispered. Monica nodded once. We have evidence he accessed a financial portal using your identity, she said. We're still determining scope. The room swayed slightly. This wasn't just theft from Halmione. This was my father trying to poison the foundation of my life. My credibility, my records, my clean name. I felt my mother's hand grab mine under the table. Halmione's voice cut through the air like a blade. Daniel is not son, she said quietly. Daniel is predator. Monica nodded. We're moving this to a broader investigation. I swallowed, voice rough. What happens next? Monica's eyes didn't blink. Next, she said, is charging decisions and court. As we stood to leave, Monica added one last sentence. And Sophia? There's a second victim. My stomach dropped. Who? I asked. Monica's gaze held mine. The nonprofit, she said. And the number is bigger than your grandmother's wire. Court didn't feel like justice at first. It felt like fluorescent lighting and hard benches and strangers whispering over paperwork, while your life sat in a folder labeled case. My father arrived in a suit so crisp it looked like denial pressed into fabric. He glanced at us, me, my mother, my grandmother, and his eyes held mine for half a second. Not apology. Not regret. Calculation. Ethan sat behind his attorney, hunched, looking like he'd been drained. Vivian wasn't there. Of course she wasn't there. Her family's lawyer had likely buried her in strategy and silence. Monica sat with the prosecution team, calm and unmoved. Theo, the purple tie teller, sat near the witness area, tie not purple today. Plain blue. Like he was trying to be invisible. The judge entered. The room rose. My father stood too, polite as ever. And I realized something sickening. He still believed his manners would save him. The prosecution laid it out clean. A Halmione's wire. The forged PO. The recipient chain. The intermediary account under my mother's name. The footage of Vivian signing. The drafted loan structure from Vivian's family attorney. The nonprofit siphoning pattern. Then they played the bank footage. The room watched my father walk into the branch like a man buying groceries. Watched Vivian sign like she was autographing a photo. Watched Theo hesitate. Watched the fraud become real. My father's attorney tried to argue family dispute, miscommunication, intent to repay. The prosecutor didn't flinch. Forgery is not a misunderstanding, she said. It is intent. My father finally spoke when the judge asked if he understood the charges. Yes, Your Honor, he said clearly. Then, because he couldn't help himself, he added. But my daughter's actions escalated a private matter unnecessarily. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Even now, even here. He was trying to put the blame on me for turning on the lights. The judge didn't react. Mr. Park, she said evenly, your daughter did not forge documents. Your daughter did not initiate the wire. Your daughter did not spend stolen funds. My father's mouth tightened. And for the first time his charm didn't land. Because court isn't family. Court doesn't care who carved the turkey. Court cares who moved the money. The judge set a schedule for plea discussions. As people began to stand, my father turned and looked directly at my mother. And in that look I saw a lifetime of control. A silent command, stay loyal. Stay quiet. My mother's hand shook. Then she did something small and seismic. She lifted her chin. And she didn't look away. My father's eyes narrowed. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the moment he lost her loyalty, he'd become more dangerous. On the courthouse steps, Ethan caught up to me, eyes wild. Soph, he whispered. Vivian's dad just offered me a deal. My stomach tightened. What kind of deal? Ethan swallowed hard. He said if I take full responsibility, if I say I pressured Dad, Vivian will return more money, and they'll make sure Dad's sentence is lighter. I stared at him, because it wasn't a deal. It was a trap. And if Ethan took it, the predator would walk freer. Ethan caught me on the courthouse steps like a man running out of air. It was cold outside, bright, sharp winter sunlight that made everything look cleaner than it was. Reporters weren't swarming yet, but I saw a couple people lingering across the street with phones held too high to be casual. My brother's hand shook as he spoke. Vivian's dad offered me a deal. He whispered again, like saying it louder would make it real. I didn't answer right away. I watched his face, the fear, the desperation, the old habit of choosing whichever person looked strongest in the moment. That's what Ethan had always done, and it had gotten him here. What exactly did he say? I asked. This wasn't over. It was just evolving. And if Vivian's family was willing to threaten media, they were willing to threaten anything. As we stepped off the curb, a black SUV rolled slowly past the bank, windows tinted. It stopped for half a second. Then the rear window lowered just enough for me to see a familiar cream sweater, and Vivian's eyes staring out at us. She smiled, and mouthed two words. Try me. Vivian's SUV rolled away like a queen leaving a battlefield she believed she already owned. I stood on the curb outside the bank with the wire confirmation still glowing on my phone, and for a second I couldn't move. Not from fear, from clarity. Vivian wasn't trying to win Ethan back. She wasn't trying to make peace. She was trying to control the narrative the same way my father always had. Threats wrapped in polite words. Pressure disguised as advice. Silence purchased with fear. My mother's hand found my elbow. Sophia, she whispered. What do we do? Hermione looked up at me, eyes sharp, waiting. I exhaled slowly. We stop reacting, I said. We start documenting. Back at the house, I opened Monica's email again and downloaded the audio file. I didn't play it immediately. Not yet. I needed to treat it the way I treated every piece of evidence at work. Assume it's edited until proven otherwise. I called Monica. She answered on the first ring. Sophia. Vivian's counsel sent an audio file and threatened media, I said. I want to preserve it properly. Monica's tone sharpened. Forward it to me untouched. Don't rename it. Don't open it in a way that modifies metadata. I already downloaded it, I said. But I haven't altered it. Good, she said. Send it as is. Also screenshots of the threat. I sent everything, then sat at my kitchen table, Hermione's kitchen table, because her house had become the headquarters of everyone my father thought he could control. My mother hovered behind me, wringing her hands. Hermione sat down across from me, calm and furious in the same posture. You will play, she asked. I nodded. But we're doing it smart. I hit play. Ethan's voice filled the room, tired, cracked, desperate. I knew earlier than I admitted. I wanted the life. I wanted Vivian. Dad told me not to ask questions. And I didn't. My mother covered her mouth. Hermione didn't flinch. She just closed her eyes like she'd already mourned him in advance. Paused it. That's not a confession of masterminding, I said slowly. That's a confession of being weak. My mother's voice shook. But it sounds awful. Yes, I said. Because it's designed to. I played it again, listening harder like a mechanic listening to a damaged engine. And on the second pass, I heard something subtle. A tiny shift in room tone between two phrases. A barely audible click. A breath that didn't belong. A splice. I stopped the audio and stared at the waveform. Mom, I said quietly. Vivian didn't just record him. Hermione tilted her head. What? I pointed at the screen. She edited him, I said. This file has cuts. My mother's knees visibly weakened. Can you prove that? I looked up. I can, I said. And I can do better. I opened my laptop and started a folder labeled Cross-Family Timeline, then I added subfolders like I was building a case. Threat emails, audio files, social posts, a bank footage, legal letters, civil suit filings. The goal wasn't revenge. The goal was to make Vivian understand something she'd never experienced. Push back with teeth. Because here's what people like Vivian forget. When you threaten someone who knows how systems work, you're not scaring them. You're giving them a roadmap. My phone buzzed with a new email from Monica. Subject: Found it. Body: Theo remembered Vivian asked for a copy of the POS scan receipt at the branch. He printed it. It has her signature on the request line. Vivian had left fingerprints, and now she was about to learn what that meant. 2 days later, Monica asked us to come in. Not to the branch. To a small conference room behind the prosecutor's office, where the air smelled like paper and burnt coffee in consequence. Vivian wasn't there. But her shadow was, printed in every document Monica spread across the table. Monica slid a single sheet toward me first. It was Theo's receipt request form. Name Vivian, cross signature. Unmistakable, practiced, confident. She requested the POA scan receipt, Monica said. That's not normal. And it's not innocent. My mother's hands trembled. So she knew she'd need it. For defense, Monica finished. Or leverage. Hermione's jaw set. Snake. Monica slid the next page forward. Also, she said, we ran an integrity check on the audio file Vivian's counsel sent. My pulse jumped. And Monica tapped the page. It's edited, she said plainly. Multiple cuts. Multiple splices. The original recording likely contains context they removed. My mother exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. So they tried to blackmail us with a doctored file, I said. Monica nodded. Which is obstruction-adjacent behavior, depending on how far they take it. I leaned forward. Can we force the original? Monica's eyes sharpened. That's what a subpoena is for. Then she paused and looked directly at Hermione. Miss Park, she said gently, Vivian's family filed civil suit to intimidate you. But intimidation is not a shield if we can show malicious intent. Hermione nodded once. Show. Monica opened her laptop and played something I didn't expect. Not audio. Video. Bank lobby footage. The same Westlake footage, but extended. It showed Vivian signing the POA. Then after the scan, she leaned toward Theo. She said something. Monica hit enhance audio like it was a movie, but it wasn't magic. It was clean directional mic pickup from the teller counter. Vivian's voice came through, muffled but clear enough. So if anyone asks later, this shows it was handled properly, right? Theo hesitated. Then, ma'am, it shows what was submitted. Vivian's tone stayed sweet. Perfect. I went cold. Because that one word, perfect, was the sound of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. My mother whispered. She wasn't confused. No, Monica said. She was prepared. Hermione's voice was quiet, lethal. Pretty lies, she said. Ugly heart. Monica closed the laptop. We're going to subpoena the original Ethan recording, she said. And we're going to respond to the civil suit with something very simple. What? I asked. Monica's mouth tightened in a thin smile. Discovery, she said. My mother blinked. What does that mean? It means, Monica said, if they want to drag your grandmother into court, they will have to hand over everything. I felt the shape of it immediately, the way a bully panics when you insist on receipts. Vivian's family didn't want court. They wanted fear. They wanted exhaustion. They wanted Hermione to fold quietly. Discovery would do the opposite. It would force Vivian's family to choose between two humiliations. A handing over the original recordings and communications, or a dropping the suit and admitting they were bluffing. Monica looked at me. Sophia, you're going to get messages. Pressure. Offers. Threats. I nodded. Let them. Monica's gaze shifted to my mother. And Grace, she said, your cooperation is protecting you. Keep telling the truth. Keep records. No more signing anything without counsel. My mother's lips trembled. Then she nodded, steadier than I'd ever seen her. I won't, she said. Not anymore. We walked out into daylight. Hermione took my hand. You are like steel, she said softly. I swallowed hard. You are, I corrected. She squeezed my hand once. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You want discovery? Fine. We'll show the world what kind of daughter you are. Check the news. My heart dropped. I opened my browser. And there it was, a local blog post already live, headline screaming, Nonprofit scandal, treasurer's daughter may be involved. They'd done it. They tried to smear me publicly. And as I scrolled, I saw the anonymous source quote. It wasn't Vivian. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't my mother. It was my father. My mother's phone rang again, correctional facility. This time she didn't decline. She answered, put it on speaker and said one word. What? My father's voice came through the speaker like poison wrapped in velvet. Grace, he said softly. There you are. My mother's hand shook, but her voice didn't. What? She repeated. A pause. Then my father sighed, like he was the tired victim of our stubbornness. I'm hearing Sophia is pushing discovery, he said. That's not wise. Hermione leaned closer, eyes blazing. My mother didn't take the bait. Why are you calling? My father's tone sharpened slightly. To protect you, he said. To protect the family. Hermione made a small sound of disgust. My father continued, voice smooth again. If Sophia insists on making this public, he said, it will get ugly. Reporters will ask questions. Employers will ask questions. And Grace, people will ask why your name is on those accounts. My mother's jaw clenched. There it is, she said quietly. The threat. My father's breath caught just a fraction. He hadn't expected her to name it. Don't be dramatic, he snapped, then softened immediately. Grace, I'm trying to help you. You're not built for this kind of attention. My mother stared at the speaker as if it were a window into every year she'd been diminished. I built your life, she said softly. Silence. My father's voice turned colder. You don't know what you're doing. My mother's eyes flicked to me, then to Hermione. And I watched her make a decision so small only the people who'd been trapped understand how big it is. She leaned closer to the phone. Daniel, she said clearly. I'm telling them everything. A beat. Then my father's voice cracked into fury. You ungrateful. Hermione leaned in and spoke over him, Korean spilling out like fire. I didn't catch every word, but I didn't need to. The tone was enough. It was the sound of an elder reclaiming power. My father tried again, louder. Sophia thinks she's... My mother cut him off. She's braver than you, my mother said. She told the truth. You forged paper and called it love. Silence fell. Then my father's voice dropped, dangerous and quiet. Fine, he whispered. If you want a war, I'll make sure you lose. I felt Hermione's grip tighten on my hand. My mother didn't flinch. No, she said softly. You already lost. You just haven't accepted it. Then she pressed end call. The line went dead. For a moment nobody moved. Then Hermione exhaled a long breath, like she'd been holding it since the day she gave birth to him. My mother's shoulders sagged, and I realized something incredible. My father's power had always depended on one thing, their fear. And that fear was breaking. But outside the kitchen my phone buzzed again. Monica. Sophia, she said without preamble. That blog post just crossed a line. What do you mean? I asked. It contains false claims tied to your identity, she said. We're responding. Also, there's a development. My pulse jumped. What development? Monica paused. We subpoenaed Vivian's original recording, she said. Her counsel tried to stall. The judge denied the stall. I held my breath. And, I whispered. Monica's voice was crisp with satisfaction. And the original includes Vivian telling Ethan exactly what to say. My blood went cold. She coached him, I said. Yes, Monica replied. On tape. My mother sank into a chair like her legs finally gave out. Hermione closed her eyes. Monica continued. Sophia, we're calling Vivian's bluff. We're going to file for sanctions in the civil suit and refer the doctored audio threat to the court. I swallowed. So what happens now? Monica's answer was simple. Now, she said, Vivian becomes the story. That night a new package arrived, this one addressed to me. No return address. Inside was a single printed photo. A picture of me walking out of Monica's office, taken from across the street. And on the back, written in neat handwriting, I told you, try me. I didn't sleep after that. Not because I was scared of being harmed, because I finally understood. Vivian's family didn't just want to win. They wanted to punish. Punishment is what people do when they can't control you anymore. I called Monica immediately. She told me to report the stalking photo. She told me to keep the package untouched for prints. And then she said something that changed the shape of my fear into something usable. Sophia, she said, this is good. I blinked. Good. It's evidence of intimidation, she said. And intimidation looks ugly in front of a judge. So I did what I always do. I documented. I preserved. I refused to shrink. Within weeks, the civil suit collapsed. Not because Vivian's family suddenly grew a conscience, because Discovery threatened to expose their own communications, and because a judge does not appreciate a party using doctored recordings and intimidation tactics to bully an elderly woman. Vivian's counsel withdrew. The Cross family settled quietly, which is what powerful people call it when they retreat without admitting defeat. The money returned in chunks, some recovered by the bank, some clawed back through legal pressure. Some returned because Vivian's family decided it was cheaper than public disgrace. Ethan took his probation and community service like a man who finally understood the cost of cowardice. He tried to apologize in person once. He stood on Halmiani's porch holding a grocery bag like it could buy forgiveness. I walked outside. He looked at me, eyes glassy. "Soph," he whispered. "I'm sorry." I studied him. I saw the boy I'd protected. I saw the man who'd let himself be used. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "But sorry isn't a time machine." His mouth trembled. Can we start over?" I exhaled slowly. "No," I said gently. "You can start over. I'm not going back." He flinched like I'd struck him. Then he nodded, small and broken. "I understand," he whispered. And he left. A month later, Halmiani came with me to view houses. Not big ones. Not flashy ones. A modest place with sunlight and a small yard and a front door that closed with a satisfying solid click. Halmiani walked through each room slowly, touching walls like she was blessing them. In the kitchen she stood still for a long moment, then nodded once. "Good," she said. My mother stood beside her, quiet but present, no longer disappearing into corners. We signed the papers. We did the wire in person. We kept every receipt. On move-in day, Halmiani brought a small potted pepper plant and set it by the window. "For luck," she said. Then she looked at me serious. "Now," she said, "you lock door." I smiled, throat tight. "I will," I promised. That night, after they left, I stood in my new living room alone. The silence didn't feel like secrets anymore. Felt like peace. I walked to the front door. I slid the deadbolt. And for the first time in my life, I understood something I'd never been allowed to believe in my father's house. Safety isn't something you're given. It's something you choose again and again, until it becomes your life. I thought buying the house would be the end. A clean cut. A locked door. A new chapter. But you don't steal from a community the way my father did, and expect the damage to stay politely inside one family. 2 weeks after move-in, Monica called. Not with urgency this time. With exhaustion. "Sophia," she said, "we're getting more statements." "From who?" I asked. Monica paused, like she was choosing words that wouldn't make me feel responsible for everything. "From people who didn't know they were victims," she said. "They're starting to connect dots." The nonprofit audit had gone public, buried in a bland PDF at first, the kind of document no one reads until someone turns it into a headline. Then the local paper picked it up. Then the TV station did a segment. Then the blogs did what blogs do, turned fraud into entertainment. And suddenly, Harbor Lights Community Fund wasn't a charity. It was a crime scene with a mission statement. The first person to call me wasn't a reporter. It was a woman named Denise, voice shaking, who left a voicemail on my work phone because she'd found my name in a public record and decided I was the honest one. "Hi. I donated to Harbor Lights because my sister needed help with rent after chemo. They told me the fund was low that month. And now I'm seeing this news. Please tell me where the money went." I listened to it twice. Then I sat down on the floor of my new living room, back against the wall, and felt the old weight try to climb onto my shoulders again. The weight of being the responsible one. Called Monica back. "You can't let them contact me," I said, voice tight. "I'm not the point person." "I know," Monica replied. "But they're scared. They want a human face. And you're the only park who's not hiding. My stomach twisted. I wasn't hiding because I couldn't. I wasn't hiding because my father tried to smear me and failed. I wasn't hiding because I'd spent my whole life learning that the truth is the only stable ground. But still, I felt it, the pull to fix what other people broke. That night I called Denise back. Not as a representative. Not as a hero. Just as a person. I don't have all the answers, I told her. But I can tell you this. They're investigating. And your statement matters. She cried softly. I feel stupid, she whispered. You're not stupid, I said. You were generous. Someone exploited that. After we hung up, I stared at my kitchen window where Halmini's pepper plant sat, leaves bright and stubborn. I thought about my father carving turkey like a king, and I realized something that should have been obvious sooner. He didn't just like money. He liked the power of deciding who deserved help, who deserved security, who deserved dignity. And when the community realized what he'd done, it wasn't going to be polite. It was going to be hungry. The next morning, a new headline hit my phone. Former Harbor Lights treasurer claims, "My daughter is the real master." And below it, a quote from my father, saying my name like it was a weapon. Powerful people don't apologize. They reframe. A week after that headline, Vivian resurfaced, not in court, not in person, but where people like Vivian always go when they need a clean slate, online. A brand new account appeared with a soft beige profile photo and a bio that read, "Healing, growth, faith, women supporting women." Her first post was a black and white selfie with a caption long enough to be a sermon. She wrote about toxic family systems. She wrote about being manipulated by older men. She wrote about finding her voice. She wrote about closing a chapter. She never wrote the words forgery or wire fraud. She never wrote Sunhee Park. She never wrote $500,000. But she did write one line that made my blood go cold. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who looks like the victim. In the comments, women poured sympathy on her like warm honey. You're so strong. Thank you for sharing your truth. Abusers hide in families. Protect your peace, queen. It was working. Because Vivian understood something my father also understood. People don't want evidence. They want a story that makes them feel safe. I sent the post to Monica. Monica replied with one sentence. We're aware. Don't engage. But my stomach wouldn't unclench. Because if Vivian successfully rebranded as the victim, then her doctored audio threat would start to feel plausible to the public. And if the public believes a lie loudly enough, it becomes a kind of truth that ruins lives anyway. That night my mother called me, voice small. I saw Vivian's post, she whispered. I closed my eyes. Me too. My mother sounded terrified again. What if people believe her? What if they think we're... I cut in gently. Mom, people believe Dad for 20 years. Silence. Then I said the thing I'd needed to say to myself all month. Belief isn't the same as proof. My mother exhaled shakily. But it still hurts. I know, I said. And I did. Because there's a specific kind of pain in watching someone who harmed you collect comfort for it. The next morning, Monica sent me an update. Vivian's counsel has requested a protective order to keep the original recording sealed. They were trying to keep the coaching tape out of the light. Because if it came out, Vivian's entire rebrand would collapse. And I realized something else. Vivian wasn't just afraid of jail. She was afraid of being seen. That afternoon, Theo, the purple tie teller, texted Monica a photo. It was Vivian in the Westlake parking lot, talking to someone through a car window. And the person in the driver's seat wasn't Ethan. It was my father's attorney. The hearing was on a Tuesday. Plain. Cold. Ordinary. That's how the most life-changing moments arrive. Wearing the disguise of routine. Vivian's attorney argued that releasing the original recording would endanger Vivian and invite harassment, that it was irrelevant to the criminal case. The prosecutor didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply said, the original recording demonstrates witness coaching, selective editing, and attempted intimidation. Then Monica stood. She played the clip. Not the edited file. The original. Vivian's voice came through clearly now, not soft and spiritual, not healing, but sharp, controlling in that casual way rich people control service workers. Okay, Ethan, listen. Don't say you knew about the wire. Say you were confused. Say you thought it was a family loan. And if they ask about the branch, you don't remember names. You cry a little, okay? You're good at that. And you don't mention my dad. At all. The courtroom went still. Ethan sat in the back row, face buried in his hands. Vivian's attorney looked like he'd swallowed glass. The judge leaned forward, expression unreadable. Then the judge asked one question, voice flat. Ms. Cross, are you aware that witness coaching can constitute obstruction? Vivian's attorney started to answer. The judge cut him off. I wasn't asking you, she said. Vivian wasn't there, of course. But her absence didn't protect her. It made her look guilty. The judge ruled. The protective order request was denied. The original recording would be entered into the record. The civil suit behavior and intimidation attempts would be referred for review. Then the judge said the sentence that made my throat tighten. This court will not allow powerful families to weaponize paperwork and public narrative against an elderly victim. Hermione, sitting beside me, nodded once like she'd expected nothing less. After the hearing, reporters finally swarmed. Not for me. For Monica. For the prosecutor. For anyone who would say the quiet part out loud. One reporter tried to shove a microphone at me. Sophia Park. Do you think Vivian Cross is the victim here? I stared at the microphone, then at the reporter. And I said the simplest thing I could say without becoming the story. I think the victim is the woman whose signature was forged. Then I turned and walked away. In the parking lot, my mother grabbed my hand tight. Are we safe now? She whispered. I looked at her. Safer, I said honestly. But the end of a court case isn't the end of a person like Dad. And as if the universe wanted to prove my point, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From the correctional facility. My father's voice, calm again like a man resetting his mask. Sophia. You won today. But you'll still be my daughter tomorrow. Call me when you're ready to apologize. That night, I came home and found my front gate ajar. And the pepper plant in my window, Hermione's plant, had been knocked onto the floor, dirt scattered like a warning. 18 months later. Time changes you in quiet ways. It doesn't erase the story. It just teaches your body how to live without flinching every time the phone rings. The house became mine slowly. Not because of the mortgage paperwork. Because of repetition. Making coffee in the same kitchen. Locking the door without checking twice. Sleeping through the night. My mother moved into a small apartment 15 minutes away. Her first place alone since she was 19. At first she kept apologizing for it like independence was a crime. Then over time her voice changed. She started saying I want without whispering. Hermione visited every Sunday. She brought groceries like I was still a child and she was still my anchor. She planted peppers in my backyard like she was reclaiming land from grief. Sometimes when she thought I wasn't listening, she sang softly while she watered them. Ethan kept his distance. He mailed letters sometimes short, simple, no pressure. One line always repeated like a mantra. I'm trying to become someone you'd recognize again. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. Because peace is fragile at first and I refused to test it with guilt. Vivian's rebrand failed. Not in a dramatic explosion. Just in the slow, humiliating way lies die when facts become searchable. Her comments turned from sympathy to suspicion. Her healing posts started getting stitched by strangers who weren't emotionally invested. And eventually she went private again. Which is what people do when the spotlight stops flattering them. My father served his sentence and got out on supervised release. He tried to call my mother twice. She didn't answer. He tried to call Hermione. She changed her number. He sent me a letter with no return address. As if anonymity could soften the message. It said, family is forever. You can't lock me out of blood. I held it in my hands for a long time. Then I walked to the kitchen, tore it slowly into strips and threw it away. Not with rage. With finality. That night, I stood in my backyard with Hermione's peppers growing stubborn and bright. My mother sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, laughing quietly at something Hermione said. And I realized the real ending wasn't court. It wasn't money. It was this. A life where love didn't require obedience. A home where peace didn't require silence. A family that didn't punish truth. I went inside. I locked the door. And for the first time, the click didn't feel like defense. It felt like ownership. If you've ever been punished for telling the truth in your own family, subscribe. Because the next story starts with the question nobody wants to answer. What do you do when the good parent finally breaks?